celebrate the wins, because when you are pushing and striving for excellence, there are not wins, there are fails and there are lows. And so you have to enjoy wins when they come. I think for me, resilience is all about kind of enduring, how you can get through things and how you can stick with it and sit with it. And sometimes sit with those moments that are more uncomfortable than you want them to be, and for longer than you want them to be. You know, we talk about things being challenging, but in kitchens, things can be challenging for 8, 9 months. It can be really hard. And I mean, I worked at a 3-star and I went in as a sous chef, so the one under the head chef, and you've got to prove yourself to every single person in that kitchen. And that takes a long, long time. So those high pressured environments got me to know myself, because there was no one else around to back me, to support me. So I had to really get to grips with who I was and work out what made me tick. You know, it sometimes it sounds crazy, but it feels like life and death in those situations. They're so rough, they're very male dominated, and you have to cling on to small bits that you see in yourself that make you think, I can get up tomorrow and do it again. And that's really what resilience was for me, finding those little bits. So my story to kitchens is relatively unique, and I think that's something that is important to me. And that, firstly, I think in Michelin kitchens there's something like 6% of women that are head chefs, so it is completely not represented at all. But also, I came late to the game, so lots of people start in kitchens as a pot wash, you know, and it is a job for people who maybe haven't had other qualifications and struggled in some capacity. Whereas I went to university and got a degree, and I came to it untrained at 22. So people had had a lot of years on it from me. I had never trained I'd never been to culinary school. And what started out as absolutely terrifying, I quickly realized there is an absolute beauty at being at the bottom, because there is nowhere to go. You can only go up. And I learned that no one expects anything of you. You're actually the other end of the spectrum. You're kind of annoying, you get in the way, you're a bit of a nuisance, but that means there's no expectations. And so you can just kind of focus on yourself and worry about what you're doing. And it meant that I could watch everything and learn. And I knew that I was in this intense learning period. That was the first 2.5 years at the first restaurant I worked at, and everyone didn't like me. I was a complete nuisance. I was in the way. I was not what you wanted, but I could take everything that they were doing. I could watch everything that they were doing. I could think, I would do that, I won't do that. I learned, going back and learn about myself, and you know, it was brutal, and people spoke to me in a way that I would never imagine ever speaking to anyone. And I thought, you know what, when it's my turn to be in that position, I won't rule like that. Like that just, I do not see that is the best way to get something out of someone. So it's all just kind of an intense learning process. And I think I also enjoyed other things. And at the beginning, I felt like an outsider in that chefs are very focused, and we spend, you know, we can spend 80, 90 hours a week in the kitchen, and it means you don't have a lot else to talk about. And I noticed that they didn't have any other hobbies or passions. And I had other hobbies and passions. I loved exercise. When I wasn't in work, I didn't want to talk about work. And I had friends that weren't in the industry. And I identified that was actually extremely healthy, because otherwise all I did was just talk about kitchens. And then we'd go for a beer with the other people that you work with, and all they talk about was service. And I just thought, this isn't productive. Whereas I go on my day off and I'm not thinking about the kitchen, I'm doing other things. And that learned to be a very healthy habit for me. I When answering these questions, obviously something like ambition, you've got to relate it to your own story, and my story is all that I know. My ambition was the desire to succeed and a hunger to push and to always push. And I don't want that to be mistaken with talent. I think they are very different things. And I am an ambitious person who did well out of ambition and not from talent. I had no talent in the beginning. I was not good at anything. I could listen, I could learn, and I could understand what was needed, and I learned very quickly. But I was ambitious. I just wanted to get up and go again and to be the best. And I think my ambition and my competitiveness was never to do with anyone else in the kitchen, which again was a healthy habit. I think I always wanted to be the best, but not in relation to the guy next to me, in my own personal goals. And I think I had a bigger goal in mind, and I didn't necessarily know what that was. I just always thought, this isn't it. Running a kitchen isn't where it's going to stop. And I noticed that I became head chef of, no, I became sous chef of a 2-star, which I then became head chef. And that was very life-changing. But I remember getting it, and he took me into his office, and the chef baton of the restaurant, he sat me down, and I had started cooking 3 years ago. The fact that I'd moved to Copenhagen on my own with no friends or family and worked in this two-star was big enough in itself. And he said, I want to make you the sous chef of the restaurant. And I remember thinking, how do I get head chef? And it was this moment that I realized that I'm always pushing for more, and I'm not satisfied. And sometimes people talk about it and it's a narrative, to enjoy your successes. And I absolutely believe that. Celebrate the wins, because when you are pushing and striving for excellence, there are not wins, there are fails and there are lows. And so you have to enjoy wins when they come. But age 24, I don't believe it was time to stop and start celebrating. It was like, this was a fire that had been given. Go. Someone's recognized you. You are playing with the big boys now. Don't stop. Keep going. And then I became head chef. And then I was the youngest female head chef for 2-star at that time, which was phenomenal. I hope they're inspired, and I hope that they take away that you can go further than you think, because we are now quick to put in boundaries and to say when things are too much, but you don't know what too much is until you've pushed it, and you've got to push it. And it's about grit and hard graft. And if you look at my story and you want the achievements that I've achieved, it didn't come without pushing myself to absolute breaking point. And now I'm in a position where I can say, you know what, I know I can push myself really hard in there, but that actually is a bit far for me. And so I now have boundaries. But we talk of these boundaries, but how can you create the boundaries unless you've pushed it to the point of knowing them? I hope that people take away keeping what's important to you all the time. And that's sometimes challenging because you are influenced by what you're around and who you're around. But if in the back of your mind you always know what you want, and it doesn't need to be this massive goal, but if it's important to you to lead and maintain relationships, and then hold on to that. But I also think in the wider talk that things aren't linear. I worked at Francen. It was the shittest job I ever had. I hated it. They were awful. My life was so challenging there. And at the time, I lost myself fully. It was very, very challenging. But it has opened every door for me. And in the chefing world, Francen it's number 5 in the world to the chefs. It's up there with number 1. And I never have to send a CV. People know that I've worked there. I get the job. Like, it is, chefing's slightly different on those capacities, but sometimes things are really shit, but something will come out of it that wasn't necessarily that. And maybe it's you met someone, you know. I went to Copenhagen and spent 4 years there, and I worked at AOC, and that was fantastic. But I met my best friend Ellie there, and I always think that was also part of it. Like, I met this person who was my bestest friend and still is now, and whilst it seemed like I went for the restaurant, maybe there were other messages involved in it.